Okay, so we're going to take the message K-pop and then code it and then decode it. So first we have to write this code using numbers. So if we look back a couple slides, we see that K is 11, P is 16, and O is 15. So it's going to be 11, 16, 15, 16. Okay, that is our uncoded message. Okay, it's simply 11 for K, 16 for P, 15 for O, and 16 for P. Okay, so now we need to come up with what I call a key. So we're going to take each of these and multiply it by a key. Now that's step 2. Alright, the encoding matrix is a more formal word for it. I like the term key because it kind of locks and unlocks our code. So since these are 1 by 2 matrices, 1 by 2, 1 by 2, we need a 2 by 2 matrix that we're going to multiply each of these by. Okay, so let's just make one up. Now for this video I'm going to make it relatively easy. I'm going to use some zeros and some ones. Okay, we're going to use the same key for both of these. Okay, now in orange is going to represent our coded matrix. So what we're going to do is multiply these together, and the orange will be our coded matrix. Now if you were actually doing something that needed to be secure, I would not imply using a 0. Kind of makes it a little unsafe. But for this video, for time purposes, I'm going to use a 0 as one of my entries. So when I multiply this together, I get 11 times 1, and then 16 times 0. Okay, that's going to be 11. Alright, and then 11 times 2, and then 16 times negative 1. That's going to be 22 minus 16, which simplifies to 6. Okay, so that is our message that has been coded. Alright, the first 2 letters. Alright, the next 2 letters, we're going to do 15 times 1, and then plus 16 times 0. So that's going to be 15. And then 15 times 2, and then 16 times negative 1. So it's going to be 30 plus negative 16. So we get 14. Alright, and now this is the message. So let's say you wanted to, in class, send the message K-pop to someone else without the teacher knowing what you were writing. What you could do is, step 1, write it using the letters corresponding to each number. Alright, step 2 is make a key, and you have to give that key to your friend. Alright, then you would multiply the matrices in green with the ones in purple to get the coded message, step 3. Alright, now to decode it, your friend would have to take the key and then multiply both of these to get the original message. Alright, so let's do that. Okay, now let me be a little more clear about what I just said. So right here we have the coded message. Okay, I have an arrow pointing to that, and this is our key. Now we want to decode it to get it back to the original message, K-pop. So if X represents the original 2 letters, like K and P, alright, we multiply that by K, our key matrix, to get 11/6 for the first part of our message. So because there's no such thing as matrix division, what I would have to do now is multiply on the left-hand side by the inverse of K. Right, so now we have to find the inverse of K. So if you remember, that's going to be 1 over the determinant, which is A times D, so negative 1, minus B times C, so 0. Okay, and then you switch A and D, and you negate B and C. So since this just simplifies to negative 1, when you go distribute that in, we get that our inverse matrix is going to be 1, 2, 0, and negative 1. So we take this negative 1 and we distribute it. Alright, so now that is interesting. I did this randomly, but it looks like the key matrix is the same thing as our inverse. So that's not always going to happen, as you saw in the previous example. But let's now use that to uncode our matrix. So now we'll take 11/6 and multiply it by the inverse of our key matrix to now decode the message. Okay, so you would do So row 1 times column 1. So we have 11 times 1, which is 11, and then plus 6 times 0, which is 0. All right, and then 11 times 2, which is 22, minus 6, which is 16. And if you look at the alphabet, all right, the 11th letter in the alphabet is K, and the 16th letter in the alphabet is P. All right, and you would do the same thing for the second part of the message. So that's the coded message. Okay, and then we would have to decode it by multiplying by the key matrix, which was again 1, 2, 0, negative 1. Okay, and I'll erase this for now. And when we multiply, we get, all right, that's a 0 before I messed that up. We get 15 plus 0, all right, and then also this is a 2. That's my bad. Should be writing this matrix right here. We're taking the inverse of K. So 1 times 0 is 15, 14 times 0 is 0, add them together, get 15. Then 15 times 2 is 30, plus negative 14 would be 16. All right, and then there's our message. We got K, P, O, P. All right, so in this example, this video, we just took this message, we wrote it in number form, okay, then we coded it, all right, and then we decoded it back. All right, so that's how you do it. You take matrices either 1 by 2 or 1 by 3, multiply by a square matrix that's 2 by 2 or 3 by 3. All right, to code your matrix, that square matrix, just make sure it's invertible, meaning it has an inverse. All right, and then to decode it, to decrypt it, we're going to multiply those messages by the inverse of our key matrix to go back to where we started.